On the mic, maybe?
Gotcha.
Okay.
The mic on that, okay.
Aha.
Yeah.
This meeting is being conducted in accordance with RSA 91A. It is being conducted in the Lebanon City Council chambers and also through the city's virtual platform. If you wish to participate remotely, there are instructions on how to enter the meeting available on the city's website, lebanonnh.gov/live. You can also participate by phone, and instructions on how to do so are available on the city's website. If you have any difficulty accessing the meeting through the virtual platform or by phone, you can email me, and I will try to assist you as best I can. Please note that if there is a problem with the remote meetings platform, the meeting will continue, as the only legal requirement under RSA 91A is to have an in-person meeting. If you are participating remotely or by phone and you wish to speak when public comment is allowed, you can simply unmute yourself and begin speaking. Please do not worry about the raised hand feature. Please state your name and your ward of residence. If you live in another community, please state the name of the community where you live. For individuals attending in person, if you have a comment or question, please step to the microphone or to the presenter's table when recognized by the chair. Please remember to state your name and ward of residence if you live in Lebanon, or the name of the community where you live if it's somewhere other than Lebanon. If appropriate, please be prepared to spell your name for the recording secretary.
Thank you for that. Before we start today, I'd like to take a moment at the start of this new year to acknowledge why this subcommittee even exists, what our reason for being is. You all may have seen some of the photos of the fires in Los Angeles. I grew up in Los Angeles, so it's tragic, but it's extra tragic because this is the time of year when it especially shouldn't be happening. There used to be 2 seasons in LA, dry season and a wet season. And there's barely a wet season anymore. As of yesterday, 130,000 people have been evacuated. 42 square miles have been completely destroyed. And this is with Santa Ana winds up to 98 miles an hour. And since last May, they've had less than a quarter inch of rain. So this is the disaster that's happening there. In New Hampshire, according to the Boston Globe, yesterday, there were brush fires in Derry and Windham, driven by high winds and severely dry conditions. It required 60 firefighters and personnel from 16 towns to fight the flames. If we don't get off of fossil fuels for our energy, for our transportation, what's happening in LA is what is going to happen here. Unless we develop like an ice age within the next 10 years, which is within the realm of possibility if you listen to some of the climate scientists. So I just want to remind us all, this is important what we're doing. The speed that we're doing it is important. And I'm glad we're all here to work on it together.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on, first order of business is approval of minutes from December 12th meeting. Is there any discussion or changes to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve them?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'm happy to second. Bill Stearns?
Okay, any objection? I'm going to say it passes by consensus unanimously. Okay. Our special guests, some of whom you may have met, Chris Kilmer. Chris, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role now with the EV Subcommittee?
Sure. So I'm one of the 2 Assistant Public Works Directors with the city, and I've been assigned as the liaison for LEAC and all the subcommittees. I've worked with Tad pretty directly with a lot of the programs over the last roughly year or so that I've been in this role. So I've been working to get all the direct pay, all the PV arrays, all of that stuff registered. So it's like I've got a base understanding of stuff. I don't claim to be an expert in this field by any stretch of the imagination, and there's a pretty steep learning curve. But I'm trying to absorb as much as I can to support you all.
Thank you.
Welcome. Looking forward to a productive year with you.
Great.
So moving on to old business. First up is the RFP for EV charging stations. Chris and I had a little bit of a back and forth on that. What's your latest thinking, Chris? Can we get this thing out?
So I think the manager, and I can certainly confirm with him, was just looking to confirm the funding with what we just went through with the budget and money coming out of the TIF district. I think he wants to confirm that it's there before this goes out. I think maybe you and I could circle back to look at this and make sure that it's set towards actually seeking to have maybe a third-party vendor actually, cover the cost of this and then work some arrangement with the city, whether it's a lease, and then a percentage of the profit coming back to the city as part of that lease. That's kind of how it was framed to me, but again, I'm coming in way at the end of this one, so whatever support you need, I'm happy to facilitate, to go back and forth to see where we're at. I know it's pretty much so in kind, ready to go, but we just may need to tweak a few things through that.
There is one important part that you described differently than the way it's written, but Tom, you were about to say
So what
something.
I was going to say is, I think we should go ahead with the RFP, because if we're going to approach people to say, here's the deal, and here's what we'd like you to do, we need to give them some numbers that are real. And not having the RFP go out doesn't let us do that.
Okay.
So I don't think there's, in my mind anyway, I don't see any harm in sending out the RFP.
The difference in the way you just described it and the way it's written as of now is the city was offering to pay for installation, but the city didn't want to own them. So there would be owner-operators operating them, and there'd be an arrangement with the city to feed some of the revenue back to the city. So that's the way it's written. I mean, depending on what Sean and you tell me is the current way we want to move, I'm happy to rewrite it, redraft it. Hi, Sean. We're talking about the RFP and whether it can go out and what do we need to modify, if anything, before it goes out. Because the subcommittee, Tom just said this, and I think he speaks for all of us, we need to get some real numbers. That's what the RFP is for. We're just spitting in the wind, making our best guess. But to get some real proposals would then allow us to see, okay, can we get any of that funding from TIF? Do we need to get it from other sources? Do we need to have a different arrangement where we're not kicking in anything and we want a third party to come in and we'll let them use the land for some kind of return? You want to speak to that?
I just thought I'd come in. I don't get to see
Yeah.
you guys that often, so I thought I'd come down.
Great.
You and I we've been talking on every couple of weeks. You and I talk, so you know how I feel about this issue, that we need to move forward on this. And if we can use TIF funds, obviously, if we can get someone else to pay for it, that's the best way to go. And we were trying to do that. And whether TIF funds could be used to help capitalize some of that, we'll get some return on investment. Different options we could use, but I think we need to keep moving forward on this. We have charging stations, a lot of them in West Lebanon. We have nothing on this side of the city. It would be good to help build the economy in the downtown area to be able to provide that. So you know where I feel about this, and I think we want to get going on this RFP to get it out there. Whether we can get some of this reimbursement, we're trying to use the tax credit piece of this. Whether that survives with the new administration is a question, but right now it's there, and we have been working on that. I had to log in, it had to be me to do it, because I need a social security number, and I don't want
Great.
other employees. So we're in there, and we're gonna figure out how to do that for this, the landfill gas to energy project, and some of these solar, to see if we can actually get that money back on that 30%. So whether or not that's gonna work for us, that's another option there. We don't know what's gonna happen with these grants in terms of state and federal level, but as long as they're there, we just keep pushing all the options and try to make it work.
Well, I like that phrase, all the options, because I think with just a very little tweaking, we can put both of those scenarios into the RFP. What would be your proposal if the city provides some funding for the installation? Or would you be willing to fund this yourself if we let you use our land? And just see what proposals come back.
Yeah, potentially, if we're going to use our capital they pay we can get capital cheaper than anybody can, right? And then if some return on that investment, it's going to be difficult to use taxpayer funds to do this. People are say, you're doing it over here, people are paying for it, why would we want to do that, especially in the environment that we're in today?
Right.
But if we could help partner with somebody, use maybe our bonding authority, but they're going to pay us back, or we're going to make a certain part of the profits back on that to pay for that, that's an option. The ideal scenario is that we have a piece of land, we'll let you run this here, and then we want a percentage of sales on that, so it makes some money for the city to be used that space that we have, just to kickstart this technology, to have enough charging stations all over the place, so people can say, I feel comfortable buying one of these because I got places I can go to charge my vehicle up.
Exactly. And if it's okay with you two, I'll go in and edit the draft. I mean, earlier I had proposed, let's get rid of all those proposed sites except the ones that are within the TIF district or on city land like the airport. And I've specified which ones would qualify for the direct pay. And so I'll rejigger it for those and tweak the scenarios wording, and then you guys can look at it and we'll talk.
Absolutely, certainly, I will put that, I will move it up the list of priorities for me to look at and make
Okay.
sure that it's taken care of as soon as you get to me.
I think I can still get into it, and if not, I'll contact you.
Yeah, sure. And then
Okay.
I'll make sure you have access.
Okay. Anything else on the RFP? Well, moving on then to Lebanon Workplace Charging Program. I'm glad you're here for that one, too.
So I can give you an update on that. At the city manager's direction, I'm getting the last loose ends tied up. So the employee waiver is done. The policy so if I'm going to use it, there's a procedure I need to do, which included a lockout policy, so that's what delayed us a little bit, because the city had a lockout policy, but it was in an SOP, a standard operating procedure, not a city policy, so we needed to flesh that out to be a full-blown policy.
What is a lockout policy?
So part of what the policy that's in place for employees to use a charging station is they're responsible for maintaining it as well. So if it needs to be cleaned, the process to clean that is to actually lock out or turn the power off. So and so it was setting up where the breakers are, showing where the breakers are for the two different stations. So it's pretty in-depth because we have employees that would be turning off the power and cleaning something. And so it's to reduce the risk hazard and all that. And this is coming from the manufacturer of how they recommend that these be maintained. So the policy is based on those manufacturer recommendations. I did reach out to both HR and finance. HR has a kind of just a sign up and then what's the placard going to look like for an employee. And then it sounds like it's landed on, it would just, any charges to the employee will be run through payroll. I'm just waiting to get the final word and what that's going to look like from the finance department, but it's on both of their plates. So I'm hopeful that I've asked for them to have that to me by the end of this week, so that I can put everything together and get it over to the manager for next week.
Especially for fire, the new fire station's going to have that for employees as well. Want to have that ready to go. And we know we have one firefighter that really likes the idea of electric vehicles. He drove the LEAF training down in Manchester. He was really impressed with it. He's kind of one of our champions. So that we want to make sure it's definitely up and running for that. I don't know how much use there'll be for here. The LEAF, did you tell them the LEAF is coming over here?
I did not.
Yeah, so the building department's going to use the LEAF.
Great.
Yeah, they'll be able to
Okay.
get, quite a bit of use of it. And we're gonna get an old police vehicle, cause we need to have 2 building inspectors, they've been using their own vehicles. So we got one old car, and then we'll have that LEAF, which is electric, and that'll be right here.
Great.
That'll be good for that, I think it'll get more use here.
Yep.
The problem that DPW's been having, the light turns off, and there are the flashing light and all that, which really is not good for safety. It shouldn't be an issue with the building inspectors, though.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk more about that later, because I've been looking around,
So,
the flashing
Chris,
light.
I gave Tad a complete program for lockout, tagout. I don't know if he passed that on to you.
I know he came up with a policy that's what was
Okay,
ordered,
so I took it from my former company and updated it and gave them, including tests to give people to see if they understand it. And if you need that again, I can send it to you.
So honestly, I have vetted the policy that he sent over
Okay.
was vetted through the other assistant director, Rick, who you met
Okay.
at your last meeting. He was a former city electrician, so he is an electrician by trade. So he vetted that for me, so
Okay.
I think as written, it's
You're
ready
all
to go.
set.
So
Yeah.
I'd rather push it forward if you're okay with that than.
Sure, I'm
than-
fine.
Than
with
redo it,
I
okay.
just wanted to make sure you knew it existed.
Yeah, I don't appreciate it.
Let me ask a procedural question, just since these things are new. Is anyone taking notes, or is it like the
This
recording
meeting.
of this meeting?
It should be being recorded.
Okay, and I see Melanie McDonald there. Hello, Melanie, thanks for joining us. Okay, so that's all in progress, and please keep me updated, and I'll check in with you occasionally.
Absolutely.
Probably it would be good for us, too, in between each meeting to have a regular check-in time sometime. I do with that with Sean, but, every couple of weeks between meetings.
Happy to do it.
Okay, anything else on workplace charging? Potential revisions to the zoning ordinance. So
Impressive memo that you put together. A lot of
coming
work.
from you, that is high praise, Clifton. You have made my year already. I had distributed I think it was an 8-page sheet that I put together at the request of the planning staff, looking for estimates of the costs of putting low power level 2 charging for every unit that has charging at multi-unit housing, rather than full level 2 for a smaller percentage of spaces. Because it would really reduce the stress on the electrical grid, it would save money for just everyone, it would be way more convenient for the residents, therefore would boost them being able to get electric vehicles. The one thing I don't have, and there's some pretty good cost estimates in there, but all the action's been in California. And of course, I moved here from California, so I'm in touch with all of them. That's where I got a lot of this info. But I'm still pursuing, trying to find East Coast or cold climate examples. I did ask Jack Green of Norwich EV, and he sent a short note that I'd like to read. And he's the project engineer for Norwich EV. He says, "This is a great initiative. I unfortunately don't have any direct experience with low power level 2, as all of our work is level 2 and level 3 focused." And that's because that's what people have been asking for, because people aren't familiar with low power level 2. I will say, then he makes a couple of corrections. I will say that the main takeaways of your document are correct. It's low cost to make parking spaces capable of low power level 2 charging when done at the outset, and can adequately serve many more drivers than would be served by the same electrical service size at full L2 charging rates. Some minor edits, which I've incorporated. There's one place where I said 16.8 kilowatts, and it should have been kilowatt hours. And there was a peak load estimate on the grid of 312,500 gigawatt hours, and that should have been gigawatts. Electricity, not my strong point. And he says, if this proposal moves forward, I would encourage the committee to keep doing what it's already doing and ensure that precise requirements are spec'd out, such as the amperage and voltage of the circuit, which you do on page 1. Looks like you volunteers are still doing good work. Best, Jack Green. So I feel relieved that an electrical expert has looked over what I wrote and said, yeah, that makes sense to me. And I have put out feelers to a couple of companies that specialize in low power level 2 and level 1 charging. Like I had a half-hour talk with Plugzio the other day, and they're going to get me some examples. They are based in Canada. They're a Canadian company, so they're going to send me an example of a cold weather area retrofit of an apartment building. And they're going to send me new construction costs from the southern US. So it's not the exact scenario I was hoping for, but it's a little bit of both. And I have forwarded this on to Nate and Catherine in planning, and I'll follow up with them to see what's next. Any questions or thoughts about any of that? Again, I'm still floating high that you said it was good, Cliff, so. Okay, let's move on to e-bike charging stations. That's an interesting one. Did you all get a chance to read the Dartmouth proposal? I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah. It was definitely good to get them involved.
Yes, it was really good to get them involved. Have you seen this?
I did.
Yeah.
Chris shared it with me. We talked about that a little bit, and I did review it.
Yeah, so Tad was the one who'd been taking the lead on this more than any member of this committee. So I guess I'm wondering, how do we move forward? Who wants to champion this on the committee, or what do we do with this? My general takeaway from that proposal was it's basically about 20,000 per station, if you throw in a few thousand for installation labor. And so then, if we like their design and what they're showing or proposing, which, I'd like to hear your opinion on that, then how do we move forward with the money for that? Or do we?
I'm just a little concerned about the survey. It didn't seem to me that the demand is really there to justify the expenditure of putting that there. That was the concern I had. And we talked about this, I think you were on that call, I think, about doing the survey to find out what is the actual interest in the community for this. And when I looked at that survey, I was concerned, and I didn't see that there's a big demand for this here, that people would actually use it and pay to have the charge done there. So that was the biggest concern, the big flag for me on that. And I'd be concerned about moving forward with it because of that.
That did cross my mind too, with, our funds being so scarce these days. I would hate for, we're still struggling to get in EV vehicle charging. I'd hate to put in e-bike charging and have no one use it. And everyone say, why did you waste your money on that? So I do somewhat share that concern. Thoughts of anyone else? Did you like the proposal? What are your feelings about now or later or anything like that?
I mean, we should maybe try to narrow it down to one site, since there's some apprehension about use, and see which site would be the most likely to use it. I know when I go by the library in West Lub, there's 2 e-bikes parked out front all the time. I don't know if they're residents that use it because they seem to be there at odd hours. And they're just using the bicycle rack to lock their bike, or if it's somebody that works in the library.
The other thought that crossed my head was, they had designed a solar-powered bike charging station, which makes a lot of sense because you don't have to connect to the grid. But I wondered, is there even any spot, I mean, in the survey, or what responses there was, Colburn Park seemed to be the most popular idea. Is there space there that has enough solar power going on it that would fund this?
I would do it with the junction boxes in the middle there. There's no trees right around that area. That'd probably be the best spot to do that, get a southern exposure on that.
Okay.
One of the things I just sent out to staff was the AARP has a grant program. This might be a good niche for that. If we could get them to fund that, so this just came to my mind because I was looking for fresh ideas. I sent it to all division leaders and all department heads, and I'm starting to get some feedback from people about some innovative ideas. They can't be, usually they're not too big. This is probably about the right size for that grant. If we could get them to fund it and not have to use taxpayer dollars on that, that might be really popular as a kickstart. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, then there'll probably be less backlash about that. I think it has to be I think it's the end of this month, I forget now. But Rebecca, our grant writer, she's the one who's collecting all this. If we want to do this, we should move expeditiously and just, what's it going to hurt to submit a grant application on it? It doesn't seem to be that extensive, the application. We could just throw that in, and we know what the dollar amount is, and see if they would be willing to pay for that, because folks who are, like me, I call seasoned people, electric bike might be more usable for them instead of having to be able to pedal. So that might be something that would fit more into that niche.
That kind of seasoned, I get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm not old, I'm seasoned, you know what I mean?
And, maybe no solar to begin with, and see what kind of use it gets, and then as an upgrade, you could do a solar and a battery, because you need a battery to back up the solar.
Though, that's a really different use case. And, let's say non-electric bicyclists park there, that doesn't mean, once we add solar, that electric bikes would come there. I mean, I like the idea of the AARP, but let's go for it for the 20,000 to put in a solar-powered one from the get-go.
If you think we can do it that cheap, I mean, I don't remember what size battery they had in there,
It's,
because it would need to be reliable.
well, take a look at it. I mean, they.
Yeah, I'll take a
yeah,
look at it again.
yeah.
If you put it there, if for some reason the solar doesn't work out, the panel's right there. We have power right there. So we have some versatility instead of having to try to run lines in the ground. That's why Tad was looking at that location. That's where our power junction boxes are. That's all located right there, underground cable to get to that.
So, does everyone feel okay about the idea of, if we ask Rebecca to help us apply for this 20 grand from AARP?
That's great.
Be wonderful.
All right, I'll contact her then.
The report's here.
Say it again?
We said the report's here to help support that.
Exactly. It's-
And with AARP, we might pull something that talks about the, I forget what it's called, where people with disabilities or seniors can be pulled behind a bike on the
Oh, yeah,
paved
yeah.
trail.
The rickshaw thing, they call
Yeah,
it?
rickshaw, yeah, the bicycle.
Trishaw.
Trishaw, not rickshaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bicycle trishaw. Just because that's an ongoing thing, and it just shows how the community's trying to serve.
Yeah.
And that, there might be e-bikes that are being used to pull that could use the charging station.
Well, and I think RAD, which is one of the bike manufacturers, has come out with a tricycle.
Okay,
Tricycle for older.
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
but just to point out it would be useful potentially for the grant application to AARP.
Be another iteration of the innovative steps we're taking
Right,
to find
right.
mobility means for folks that are seasoned.
Right, seasons, right.
Okay, so I'll get in touch with Rebecca, and depending on what she tells us she needs from us, I may
Yeah.
contact everyone and say, can anyone do this part or that part, or we'll get it done.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the end of this month or like February 5th. It's a short time window. But again, it didn't look like it was that extensive, the grant application, so we want to move expeditiously, I would suggest.
We
Okay,
must have some demographic numbers for Lebanon and surrounding area
Yeah.
that show the age of people, right?
yeah.
Right, we are higher than average.
We're pretty older
Yeah.
around here, yeah.
Seasoned.
Seasoned, yes, well seasoned, okay.
Experienced.
All right, anything else on e-bikes? Let's go on to new business. So, one bit of new business I just want to toss out. I remember the last meeting when I had gathered information on EV registrations in
Yeah.
December to compare
Yeah.
to previous years, and the numbers seemed really whack because the total registrations seemed to be double what was last year. So I got back in touch, and Kara Tracy went through a couple rounds of digging out the statistics and said that she found a big issue, and it's quite a big one, and she kind of explained that for the numbers of EVs, they had been looking at the entire database and just Lebanon, instead of just Lebanon. So the number of EV registrations has gone down, but she said that total number of registrations was accurate. So essentially, any of the numbers that we bandied about in the last couple of years, she's now saying are not legitimate. So it's a little hard to track our progress. We can track it between 2023 and 24. The number of EVs and plug-in hybrids increased from 58 to 95. That's a 58% increase, which is great
In 1 year, yeah.
in 1 year. And we do know that in 2020, the state said that our percentage of plug-ins compared to all registered vehicles was 0.54%. Well, now it's 3.5%.
Yeah.
So it is good growth.
Yeah.
We just have to knock out 2021 and 2022, because that was confusing.
Okay,
But that's good. We're having an impact, we're having an effect. Let's keep doing it, which is kind of my lead-in to new business, A, Upper Valley events in 2025. So Bill and I have been kicking back and forth. Have you contacted anyone else other than,
I haven't. I tried getting in touch with the Norwich Farmers Market and haven't heard anything back from them. So I think this isn't high enough on their priority list at the moment. I'm not sure what's the best approach for doing our own event or trying to work with another team. So I thought maybe I'd chat with you for a few minutes when we were finished to see where we move from here.
and this, by the way, is we're thinking of an event around Earth Day or Earth Month specifically. I will say that for the Upper Valley EV Expo in September, I had approached Hartford and Norwich to see if they wanted to host it. And Norwich said, no, but we're happy to help. And Hartford, I attended one of their meetings virtually and got them kind of excited about it, but I have heard nothing since, so I'm going to follow up with them for September. I'd like to, it would be great if it was on the Vermont side this year, because Green Mountain Power is, Vermont's one of only 2 states in the nation that have this new gizmo that you can put on meters that makes it easier for people to add EV charging in homes with limited electrical capacity. But that's September. For Earth Day or Earth Month, we've been thinking of the Norwich Farmers Market, and I looked back to see what groups had Earth Day events last year that maybe we could piggyback on. And the Montscher Museum had one, and what was the other one? I'm forgetting now, but there was another one that we could maybe see if we can piggyback on. Last time I described this idea of having an Earth Day open house, where people who have heat pumps, or they've done weatherization, or they have an EV, or whatever, open up their homes for people to come and ask their questions and talk to them. So I just put out feelers to see would anyone be willing to do that. And I got about 9 people in different parts of the Upper Valley who said, yeah, I've done this, this, and this, and I'm happy to have people come. So,
That's great.
yeah, so you and I should talk afterwards, because that might be the easiest way to go this year.
Yep.
Because it's sort of all online. I mean, I can create a form that people fill out and then really do some publicity saying, sign up to show your home. Then that's when we know our participants, then I just make a guide and a map, and we might even ask, it might be a way to ask people to donate $5 for that map to go talk to people and raise a little bit of money for the.
I mean, it's the same concept that people use for touring kitchens, let's say, in a home,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
And they charge, and they don't give the locations unless you pay. They don't just publish them, and you don't want random people showing up at your house either, right?
yeah. And a couple people said, I'm happy to talk about what we've done, but I don't want them in my home. So it's like, I don't keep them on the list. That's a different model, And other people have said, can we piggyback on this? I mean,
if we don't anticipate a big turnout, we could always try to use Solar Flex parking lot in Norwich. I mean, the farmer's market is right there, so people go by. And the farmer's market traffic is crazy. If you ever
Yeah.
try to pull into their parking lot, I don't think they could handle extra traffic.
all right, well, Bill, let's talk afterwards if you have time, and we'll just pick a.
And just as an aside, I had Solar Flex quote a solar unit for a project I'm working on
Oh.
at my former company to put in their parking lot, so we'll see what happens there.
I'm glad you said the word Solaflect, because I want to backtrack back to the RFP a little bit and bring Chris up on a little bit of history.
Yeah, and when I talked to Rob, he was out on the West Coast looking for financial backers to, I think, bolster their company, and he was partnering with somebody, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. So I think I told you in an email, I had presented to the TIF Advisory Board and then to the City Council about the idea of using TIF money to get a solar-powered EV charging station, the Solaflect EV. And we looked around the country for others, and there was only one other thing like that, which was way more expensive, so we just settled on the Solaflect EV. but it does not have the capability of charging the user a fee. Tom found a device that he thought would work and worked with the SolarFlect guys for months, 6, 8 months. And they finally threw up their hands and said, we don't have to, it's not working, there's a glitch, we don't have time to deal with it. And the makers of the device said, same thing. So we have not bought that. And there was a period there too where we thought it wouldn't qualify for the direct pay rebate. Now it looks like it does qualify, but it still doesn't have, and that would have been a deal breaker. The not being able to charge a user fee isn't a deal breaker, but especially with the budget crisis, it's less appealing than it was. So because we never bought it, now it's sort of in competition with these other sites in the RFP. And when we have the RFP responses, we'll compare them all and the SolarFlect and decide which ones we want to move forward with. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, yep.
Okay. Okay. One other thing, which was just an announcement, but it kind of fits here. Dana, the Hartford Sustainability Coordinator, blanking on his last name, but he let me know that they did get approval for 8 NEVI fast charge ports in the Hartford municipal parking lot. Not there by City Hall, but the one behind like Northern Stage.
In downtown, right.
In downtown White River Junction.
Great.
So there'll be 8 more ports over there. And between those and the ones on, Commercial Row there on, what is it,
Railroad Ave?
12A?
Or, no,
In West
12A,
Lebanon?
Right, right.
Plainfield.
With the fast charge stations on 12A and now these in Hartford, Little West Lebanon is a harder case to make for putting EV charging. Rachel Townsend, can you mute or? Thank you. Okay, so I think the only thing left,
Did you clean?
Yeah.
Did you get to that?
I'm just
Oh,
about
okay.
to, but there's one, the only other thing I want to mention before we dive into strategic planning is Henry and I will be meeting with Vital Communities on Monday. This is more of a LEAC thing than EV Subcommittee. But to see in what way can we collaborate with them to help make up for the loss of an energy manager. And I know, well, one of the questions they've already put out, and you're the one who's been around here longest, Cliff, is what did we do before with Vital Communities? Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, just some examples, I guess. The whole Solarize, we had Solarize Lebanon program. That was, it may not have started with Vital Communities, but they kind of developed a package that communities could use to essentially solicit one or more solar vendors who would give sort of a uniform discount off of their normal cost to get a bunch of new projects. And so I can't remember if Tad was on board at that time or not, but the first time, we just did it once. Hanover's done it a couple of times. Plainfield and Cornish have done it a couple of times. But when we first did it, we more than doubled the number of residential PV installations in the city.
Wow.
And, what it sort of relied upon was, the fact that there was a group of volunteers within the community that were promoting it. And we had some, a lot of good turnout and interest. And we had part of it was to have a day where people could go and look and visit different homes where people had done this and, talk about that experience. Because we did that at our house and had a number of people stop by. And then also talked about the energy efficiency things we'd done. So the point was Vital Communities kind of had a whole package of materials for that, including yard signs that were put out with the Solarize program, and it really just facilitated, it made it easy. It was like a step-by-step thing. The other big way that they helped us early on, or at one point, was they had a package of sort of a process to work through and figure out what are your priorities and what kind of actions can you do in what time frame with what resources. So it was I forget, that was also sort of a kit or a process. And we did have, people from vital communities come and, sit with us and work through that process.
Cliff,
Yeah.
if I may interject, I was on the phone with Sarah Brock,
Yeah,
and she has forwarded to me those plans,
okay.
just like you're describing.
Right. So there's a couple examples. There were a few other things. At one point, well, it's not really energy, but it's related. They did have a program for new bicyclists, and sort of it was a training program. It's like how to ride on streets and, sort of just getting people more comfortable with riding bikes around the community. So that was and that was sort of more their transportation program. I don't know how much they have energy and transportation together. They kind of work side by side. Some people did a bit of both. So those are some examples of the kinds of things that they've been able to help. They helped us with in other communities.
Okay. Thanks, that's helpful. Okay, unless there's something else, we can dive into updating the strategic plan.
I mean, just to comment, when I went by the Rivian charging station the other day, for the very first time, I saw all 6 chargers being used simultaneously,
Wow.
And not just by Rivians.
all by Rivians.
Oh, all by Rivians. Is it still only open to Rivians?
To the best of my knowledge,
Yeah, they had,
Rivian is one site at the moment that's open to non-Rivian chargers.
Oh, okay.
The Rivian Adventure Network, the high-powered ones.
Yeah.
And they're planning still to open it up, but they haven't yet.
yeah.
The current understanding is that Hyundai and Kia will get access to the Tesla superchargers on January 15th.
Oh, huh. Have they gone with, have they switched over to the Tesla port, or?
The new Hyundai Ioniq 5 is the first car that comes out with the NACS port,
Okay.
and it's just barely for sale this past week or
And
so.
Rivians have an adapter that they can use Tesla as well.
Yep.
But the way they're situated, when they pull into a Tesla charging station, they're taking up 2 spots because they pull in instead of back in, and it's a problem.
And that's true for almost all cars except Tesla. Yeah.
well,
Okay,
okay, so strategic plan, and I know in there's some talk about Lebanon's fleet. So that's when I was going to maybe bring back up the idea of the Ford truck and the light not staying on and stuff. But I'm, we like to keep our meetings to an hour. So I'm thinking maybe we start in on the strategic plan and finish it at the February meeting? Or what are your thoughts?
So, we certainly can. The other option is take some time to digest this. I gave you a lot of information via email, and I know it's cumbersome, and I know that spreadsheet is not the easiest to navigate through because it doesn't contain the format. So kind of what I envisioned today is, okay, we've got to get this done. We've got a time frame, but we're not bumping up against it yet, but I wanted to get it on your agenda as soon as I could. So I think you potentially taking some time, I think if we just carve out, even if we just say next month, we're going to take a half an hour to make sure we get through this. It may not take us that long, but just plan on that a little bit longer next month. I think we can get through most of the items that are in there and get that update ready. I know I spoke with Henry the other day and at LEAC. Next week, we're going to kind of have that same thing, to have the basis, to have you folks have basically the next month to go over everything, get your input, and then when we cycle back to the February meeting, if I recall our conversation correctly, that's when we're going to kind of finalize that. Then that gives me a couple weeks to get it done and then over to the manager's office for review before it goes to the council.
Well, that works for me because that gives us a few more weeks to like finish the workplace charging plan, you know, which is
Sure.
stuff on the updates. That would be better than saying, well, it hasn't happened yet, you know.
Right.
So can we talk for a minute about the trucks and the light and stuff?
Sure.
Before you jump to that,
Yeah.
is everybody, do you feel really confident you understand what this process is for the strategic plan?
Go ahead and describe it.
Well, I just want to make sure, because the purpose of the strategic plan is really to drive the direct, for the city council to issue its broad guidance to boards and committees, and more importantly, the city administration to carry these particular objectives out, and then go and measure them to see if they actually got done, and what our status is on those. So some people, I don't think, fully appreciated what the purpose of doing that was. In the past, we had annual outcomes, which was made just by administration. We presented to the city council, they never approved it. The strategic plan is the document from the city council issuing that guidance, the city's governing and legislative body issuing that guidance. These are the things we want you to go and accomplish. So it's important to do that because that drives our budget process. So those particular objectives. And in the past, we never involved boards and committees. We've been doing that for the last 3 years now, because it's been very fruitful by doing that. And then engaging the general public, which we've done the last couple of years, is one I'm hoping we get a lot more participation this year. I mean, I think we might, there's a lot more interest. So that's really the big picture of that. So we're looking at things that are not pie in the sky, but things that can actually be accomplished in the ensuing year with other components in the 2 years after that. So it's not a long-term plan. There are some long-term items, but the things we're going to accomplish in this shorter window to get to the long-term objectives. But it's not pie, it's not aspirational. It's what we actually think we're going to be able to accomplish. Otherwise, it's just a nice-looking document on the shelf. And we didn't create this. The other communities, Fort Collins, Colorado, has a pretty good strategic plan. And Germantown, Tennessee is another example we looked at. So we took bits and pieces of others, and we kind of have our own, which is, there's quite a few differences from what those communities have. So that's the broad picture. I just want to make sure everybody is grounded in what the basic concept is and what we're trying to do with it.
Sounds good. And actually, it's maybe a good year here, too, if we can talk about the trucks for a second, because I learned from Chris that 2 hybrid trucks are being bought because with the Ford F-150, there's a safety light, emergency light that won't stay on because the vehicle shuts down after X amount of time.
In that it kind of goes to sleep.
Yeah.
Not that its battery's necessarily depleted.
No, right, batteries are not depleted, but they figure you walked away and forgot to turn the car off, so they turn it off for you. Now, so I, of course, turned to Facebook, because there's a group for every electric vehicle on the planet on Facebook. And I joined the F-150 group and just did a search on that question before I posted a question, because they don't like redundant things. And, of course, it's in my computer, but I forgot to bring it with me. They had 3 ideas on how to keep the car running for hours. Apparently, at least one of those methods doesn't work for the older vehicles, but works for the newer Fords, F-150s.
This was the very first
Yeah.
EV version, full EV version of the F-150, yeah.
And I know, Chris, you said you called Ford, you read the manual and all of that, but is it okay if I forward these 3 tips to you to see if it's something you hadn't considered?
Absolutely, because if we can keep that light on, it aids our engineers in safety on the side of the road.
Exactly.
So
Because the other thing that popped in my mind was, and again, I'm not second guessing you, it just popped in my mind, you know, you can buy one of those safety lights that's battery powered, runs on 2D batteries, and it's magnetic, so it sticks to the roof of your vehicle if you're
And they
parked.
don't have the carrying power. We've got LEDs that in the bright daylight, when it's sunny, 90 degrees out, and you can't see anything, we've gone to LEDs that cut through that to ensure that motorists see our staff on the side of the road. That's
Okay.
why we all wear the slime green with the
Yeah.
ANSI retroreflective stuff on it to make sure we're safe. So that's just a battery powered, like a double D-cell battery power is just not an option. It just, it
Doesn't
doesn't
meet the
have the.
standards. Got
Right,
it.
it doesn't meet the safety that we
So
need.
Ford is selling police electric, cars or SUVs they must have that solved.
Well, it sounds like the newer vehicles, yes, can do some things the older ones couldn't. And so that was one of my questions. Did you all talk to a Ford dealer
Yes.
now about the new vehicles? Like, what can they do? Because maybe they can do what you're.
Our fleet superintendent went and researched this and hasn't solved the problem, and that's what we've looked at. And the workarounds, I did the same thing you did. I went online, I Googled it, because our engineers are like, we don't have the time. So I went through 3 or 4 different processes that I found online, and half of them our truck doesn't do. And the other half, if you actually read down through, it works in some instances, other instances it doesn't. Sometimes it's a short-term fix, we'll get it to stay on for 20 to 25 minutes. Because what we did find is when you get to where you want to go, you put the vehicle in park, you leave it in idle. Now, obviously, it's not idling, it's an electric vehicle, but you kind of leave it in idle mode, so you're not powering down. That will at least leave that light on for 20 minutes. So we at least have bought an extra 10 minutes, because if you turn the power off and just have it run off the 12 volt, it's there. One of the other options we were told is we could try and splice into the system, and this is what one of the Ford techs did, and we've told Jesse, no, we're not, we don't want you messing with that. One of the other workarounds is to plug it into the bed. Well, that's all well and good, but it's been snowing, rain, sleet, that's just gonna corrode that outlet, and then what issues is that gonna cause within the internal system as well? We use the truck as a truck. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in the back of it, so it really isn't an option to make that not usable. So that's really where we can, I mean, we've looked at all the options to try and make this happen, but we went with the hybrid, saying this is, we see where it's going, it makes sense, let's go with a hybrid vehicle. So, and there's a state bid for those. We went through the state bid to get those, so that's why we landed at that, because it meets the needs of the department, but also falling in line with the purchasing policy and the electrification policies that's in place.
I mean, the Chevy Silverado is getting great reviews, even better than the F-150, the electric one.
Right.
I don't know what they have for options.
Yeah, I mean,
It's got longer range.
for this, I think I can speak for the subcommittee as a whole. Our initial reaction to buying any gasoline-dependent car is, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be for something as basic as a truck with a light on it. There's got to be something that works. Because you buy or lease a gas car, and the hybrid is a gas car. You cannot run it without gasoline. You're locking in those greenhouse gas emissions for a decade, 2 decades, however long that vehicle lasts.
Chris, may I ask how it's currently powered? Is it a cigarette lighter adapter or USB or
Or
the
hardwired?
light in particular? How does
So
it connect to the
It's
truck?
plugged into the 12 volt,
So the cigarette lighter adapter?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
and that's what the Ford tech recommended we do.
Makes sense, perfect.
Because one of the tips that I saw, and again, I don't remember if this is just with the newer ones, there is a way to just have the outlets stay on without the whole vehicle staying on.
That was one of the workarounds. I looked, and the truck just doesn't have that option.
With the older one, yes, but the newer one, apparently. And so if you're talking about buying 2 new trucks,
I mean, they're purchased, so they're already in service,
yeah.
so.
And just moving forward and working together, we heard nothing about this. We heard nothing that this was going to happen, that hybrids are being bought, that the policy isn't meeting your needs. And you could tell there's interest here in helping to figure out, is there a way to make this work with the new vehicle? So we'd love to be included in your needs and discussions, because maybe we can contribute to it. We're not trying to tell you what to do or not doubting your expertise or the fleet managers, but we're here to help, so if we can.
Understood, appreciate that.
Okay. So do people want to, like, over the next few weeks, read through the strategic plan, and we'll put it top of the agenda next time, and we'll just dive in line by line and say, well, that's done, or that's obsolete, or this didn't get done, or we want to do this and that's not listed? Does that work for people?
Sounds fine.
I maybe missed that. Was that something circulated separately from the agenda?
Yes, Chris sent it out just
Okay.
a couple days ago.
Okay, I'll look for it. I'm sure it's here, there.
Yeah.
If not, reach out. I thought you were in the, just.
He probably is. He gets like 6 million
I'm
emails
not
a
gonna
day.
criticize the assistant mayor whatsoever.
Well,
he's
and
on top
today
of
in
things.
particular, we received 300 or 400
Oh, my God, wow.
So, as I started to say, that Excel
into the city
spreadsheet
account.
was the only way I could get that information off the mural board without retyping everything. So the format isn't perfect, but if you open up the mural board, the strategic plan that's there, those 3 tabs within that correspond with the 3 sections that LEAC and then the subcommittee would have. And they're kind of highlighted by the number, so you kind of have to track across. It's not the easiest way, but that's how it's set up. So if anybody has issues and just wants some help, shoot me an email, give me a call. I'm happy to try and walk you through how that Excel spreadsheet is. But unfortunately, with the mural board, there was no way to export that other than what we did. I actually reached out to Melanie to help do that because I couldn't get it out myself, so.
Well, and think about, at the next meeting, it probably would be helpful if you can put something up on the big screen that we can all go through together.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay,
Probably what I would do is actually have that 3 tabs spreadsheet, and then we can just work off of that.
okay. So that's it for strategic plan for today. Upcoming events and future agenda items, I already told you about the Nevy ports coming to White River Junction.
And we've got somebody online, too.
Yes, is anyone online who has questions or want to say something? This would be a good time. Raquel, Melanie,
Please
anybody?
keep in mind,
This is Melanie. I'm just, I'm actually working on a different project for our agenda meeting system. So you guys were at the right time. So I'm just listening in while I'm working on this. So
Oh,
no
so
comments.
We're your
Good
guinea
work.
pigs. Okay.
And how
And
about
I'm hoping
remote?
that the strategic plan will get easier to use.
Okay. I will say that I had sent to committee members, and Rebecca Owens had resent to me the New Hampshire Climate Plan sessions. I signed up for the transportation. There's 5 groupings, and they're asking people to attend as many of, I think it's 4 monthly meetings as possible to give them technical expertise or something. You may all have seen that email from Rebecca Owens in talking about the e-bikes. If we ever hope to get any money from the state for something like this, e-bikes would need to be mentioned in the climate plan.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's one reason for us to participate, and anything that we think we might ever want to get state money for, we have to make sure that's in the climate plan, because that would increase our chances.
Including probably federal money through the state if
Exact-
such exists in the future.
Exactly, right. I don't see the state giving us any money unless it
Right,
comes from the
right,
feds. So I was gratified to know you don't have to attend all the meetings, but they want you to try. So come join me, you know? Let's at least put our voices in there. It's disappointing that the state climate plan is going to be totally voluntary, but that's New Hampshire for now. But still, we can have some influence by making sure key elements are in that plan. And the last thing I want to throw out, and it's too bad Sean left because this was his idea quite a while back. I think in September, he asked me to make a video about volunteering for the city, as we all do on this subcommittee and on LEAC and as assistant mayor and in many different ways. So it's on my agenda, so if anyone's willing to stay afterwards and let me just get 30 seconds of you talking about why you're volunteering. With the budget the way it is for the next few years, we're going to need volunteers more than ever. So it's probably a good time for me to really move on making this video so they can put it out. And if not today, I'll catch you another time. Given my to-do list just from this meeting, I'm not going to finish the video this month, but I can at least start taking the recordings, right?
Right. And I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you.
No worries. I've got you here in person. I'm going to grab you before you go. Anything else, EV-wise? We did it in an hour, folks. That's my goal. next meeting, let's just make sure we have the next meeting, which should be the second Tuesday in February, which.
13th.
Whoops. The 13th. That's still okay for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. All righty. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
All second, Bill Stearns?
All right, unless there's any objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.